LaDonna Redmond. Yay! She was one of my role models when I first got into all of this. She's a former Food First board member. She's Education and Community Outreach Coordinator for Seward Community Cooperative in Minneapolis. She's a food justice activist, writer, and motivational speaker. She's the founder of the Campaign for Food Justice Now. She successfully worked to get Chicago public schools to evaluate junk food, started community grocery stores, and worked on federal farm policy to expand access to healthy food and production in communities of color.
With honoring my ancestors, I stand strong because I stand on the shoulders of those who go before me. Yeah. And without them, I could not be here. Without your ancestors, you could not be here. Without, indeed, the work that, I'm used to calling you Francis Moore Lappé. I may have to say your whole name, when honoring you, but when listening to Francis and the story around Joe, we stand strong because we should stand on their shoulders. And we have to honor all that energy that brings me here today, and I'm honored to be here. I kind of wanted to take a different spin on the questions that I was asked to talk about, but for me, the phrase Black Lives Matter is very important because of all the work that's going on now, but 15 years ago, well, almost 17 years ago, when I bumped into the food system, because a Black life mattered. And that was the life of my son, and he's the reason that I know you. You would not know me otherwise. I was not into trees. I liked plants. I grew a few in my house. That was pretty much it. I went to the grocery store, I bought my food, I went home, I ate it. End of conversation. I didn't know a system. If you know anything about a food system or an agricultural system or how it was grown or that I should care about it or anything like that. That was not in my psyche, even though in my DNA is this call for justice. Understanding that there are basic human rights. I did not understand that food would be the tool that I would use to apply justice to the life of my community. That's how I found out that our food system was broken. I became a mother. And the one thing that I realized was broken as well was not just the food system, but the food movement. It lacked an analysis that understood the issues of access and availability were rooted in exploitation. It seemed as though the triple bottom line was colorblind and that the colorblindness prohibited the food movement from being a place that welcomed someone with my skin. So I made it my business, indeed it's my mission, to correct this food movement's narrative that refuses to acknowledge that exploitation, particularly the exploitation of land and labor of Black and brown people, is important, that Black lives matter. So first things first, I feel like we have to tell the truth, and one of the things that I like about Food First, the reason that I became a board member, was that there was this willingness to tell the truth. So the truth is that our food and agriculture system has always been unjust, and it's always been based on the exploitation of land and labor. The slave system fueled the U.S. economy for generations, and it enriched this nation. From the 1500s to the 1800s, European slave traders imported more than 12 million slaves to the Western Hemisphere. Slavery built modern capitalism. And along with that, the domestic work, slaves were exploited to grow cash crops like cotton and sugar, and they produced commodities that were sold in international markets for profit. Slaves themselves were also property. The reminder that Black Lives Matter is, for me, not just a reminder it's just not a reminder, not just a label, but it's a call for the dominant culture to stand against exploitation in all its forms of oppression. It's very easy to look at Black Lives Matter and maybe even say to yourself, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamar Rice, Eric Gardner, and Freddie Gray has nothing to do with the food system. It's easy to even think that they have nothing to do with the food system and that the only lives that matter are male lives, until we understand that women are trafficked and killed by the police and other institutions in and outside of the food systems. So we could say the names of Tanisha Anderson and Yvette Smith, Miriam Carey, Darnisha Harris, or Rukia Boyd. And it's easy to think this disconnect is clear until you understand the truth. And the truth is that all exploitation is linked. That's what I learned through the work of Food First. That the exploitation in our food system, the exploitation of our land, is linked to the exploitation of policing. And that the policing tied to slavery around slave patrols, a component of systemic violence, gave birth to the modern police system that we know today. So this terrorizing of people, terrorizing them to stay on land, or terrorizing them to get off of land, still exists in our food system. So whether we're talking about exploitation that is in the agricultural field, or whether we're talking about the exploitation at the hands of police in Ferguson, or whether we're talking about genetically modified plants or militarized police, we are called to stand against exploitation, and we stand against the main tool used in oppression, and that is white supremacy. Food First is standing in solidarity with all of those things that I've just talked about. And I'm very proud to stand in solidarity with them. Thank you.